Hi everyone, my name is Lacey Bierly. I am from Mount Angel, Oregon. I grew up showing cattle at Marion County ever since I was 9, and now my husband and I both raise show cattle together. And I'm here to give you a couple of tips and tricks for when you're going out and you're selecting your new calf. For Marion County, it's the July fair, so we're looking at a July endpoint. And when I say that, we're wanting our steers to probably weigh from 1250 to 1400 pounds. And so when you're getting your calf, you're wanting a calf that's probably born between January, February, March, even beginning of April can sometimes be iffy, but depends on the calf. Right now, if you're still shopping for a calf, it should be weighing about 600 to 750 pounds. And that's kind of a good guarantee that it should be able to make weight for your July endpoint. When we're going out and we're looking at calves, most important to make sure it's going to make your endpoint, your July fair. And then also we want to make sure we're looking at an animal with good structure, with a good frame, and with a good temperament. When I'm talking about structure, I want to make sure that we have enough curvature in these back legs. We don't want them stick straight. It can have a lot of impact on how they get around, on how they gain weight. And the judges prefer a calf with a nice curvature to the back leg. This calf has got some really good curvature. When we talk about cattle popping, is when they're out in the move and you see their pastern, which is about from here to here, it'll get all bundled up and it won't look comfortable. They'll pop before they lay their foot down. And so when we don't want that in a calf, we want them to be able to set their hind down real well, real smooth and comfortable. We don't want them to look like they're in pain when they're out there walking. So that's really important. That can help a calf gain weight, can help them get around the ring a lot better. When we're talking about temperament, you want one that's good attitude, even if there hasn't been a halter on it. You know, you're asking your breeder these questions when you're going out to look at calves. It should be, they should know a good deal about the calf. You know, other calves that cow has had can also have similar personalities. Even from that bull, it's all good to know. Otherwise, it's not worth having a calf that's not going to work with you. These are all questions that you should be asking your breeder. When you go out and you look at these calves, it's really important to get a good reputation with that breeder. It's good to ask them a lot of questions. No question is stupid. It's really good. And then when we're also looking at a calf, some extra points, we want them to have a nice clean front end. And when I refer to that, I mean up here underneath their chin, kind of down to their brisket here, we want it nice and clean. We don't want any extra leather or any extra skin down here. We like a nice clean front end like this heifer has. Some steers can kind of get a little bit of a bull neck, and even if it's small, when you first see that and they start putting weight on, it's going to get a lot worse. Their neck's going to get short and it's going to become a real bull neck, and we don't want that. We can look down their top, make sure they have a nice good top line, their tail head sits into them, not a super high tail head. Sits in real nice. We're looking at their pins, they sit in nice. And then kind of when we get into their belly, we want them to be sappy, soggy bellied, which means that they're soft made. They're not rigid or hard. When you're looking at their belly, even when they're young, even when they haven't been put on grain yet, it's important to see that there has some sweep to their belly. This heifer, she's a tiny bit tubular. She's been on grain for a while and she still hasn't been able to drop back here very well. So that's kind of what I mean when I refer to tubular. We want them to be able to drop and get soggy down here. And it all kind of ties in very nicely. Of course, we want a big rump. We want a hip that extends nice into their leg. These are all kind of key points. You can always start to look for the fun hair after you get past the structure, the temperament, and the frame. Those are all super important points when you're looking for your next calf. So now we're going to get into more of halter breaking and tying and walking. If you're getting a calf that has never had a halter on it, we can kind of go over that. You want to make sure that when you first get that calf, that they need to settle into their area. You want to make sure they're eating good, that they're not sick. Make them comfortable in their area before you start stressing them out and putting a halter on them. When you first get them in like a little confined, smaller area like a stall, and you can just use a show stick on them. You can start to use a brush on them just to get them used to you and being around them and touching kind of everywhere. And then we can kind of introduce the halter. And we like to start with this one for breaking. It's got a little bit different loop here than the usual just rope halter. It's got a loop that will, when they cinch up or they want to pull back, it cinches, but then when they give release to it, it gives release back. Versus the other halter, it'll just keep that cinched up, kind of makes it hard to breathe, can give them a little bit of a lump underneath their chin from being sore, from getting cinched up there and pulling back. So this is nice for breaking. It gives them a relief, teaches them that when they give back, it's okay. Not going to get hurt. When we're first starting halter breaking, we like to kind of tie them a little bit lower and give them some slack. So we can tie them kind of down here and go one around, but then we'll give them some slack and they can kind of move back and forth and learn the pressure of the halter without freaking out too bad. And then we'll bring up here, and I like to go around once, and then I'll loop this, my end of the halter. I'll bring this loop up, and we'll go underneath. And we have this loop here, and then we'll bring the end through, pull, through, and pull. And that's kind of a nice quick release where if they do get caught up in some way, they get their leg in the panel or something, you can just pull on this, and it will completely let loose. You don't want to, some people pull this through, but then if you pull on that, it's not going to come loose. You like to keep it out still tight when you pull it here, but easy for them to get untied if they get into any trouble. And so when you have them tied like this, it's nice. They can kind of learn their boundaries. They can pull on it. They can go back and forth and kind of learn the boundaries of the halter. When the calf starts to get used to this area, then we like to move them up a little bit, shorten their leash, and we'll get them comfortable to having their head up. We're still always brushing on them, always working on them. That first time you have them tied down like that, we like to leave them for like an hour to like 3 hours, just depending on how the calf's doing. If they're comfortable, you always need to be there when the first couple of times. Make sure that they're not getting into any trouble. They can jump, they can do all sorts of stuff, and so we want to make sure that we're there to undo them and retie them if they get into any sort of trouble. And when you first start out, I think it's important to start doing it. You do it on the first day. You need to do it for the next couple of days after that too, because you don't want to just do it one day, come back a week later, and try and reteach it all again. You need to be consistent the first couple of weeks when you're halter breaking, so that they're not forgetting any of what you taught them. Especially if they get that sore underneath their chin, it's nice to not have to relearn that what they think is now a bad experience. So after we have them tied low for a while, we like to tie them a bit higher, get them used to kind of having their head at what we like to have them if we were showing them in the show ring. We work them like that for a while. We'll start, when you think that they're ready after brushing on them and they're just used to it, they're doing great, then we'll start maybe taking the blower to them on just a low level. We'll take it to kind of their feet and their legs first and then work up. And then if you think that they're doing well on the halter, each time after they're tied up for a couple hours, then we'll let them loose. And in this small confined area, we'll do a little circle with them. A lot of times the calf either wants to bolt or it wants to just stop and not go anywhere. So if you have a calf that wants to bolt, I think it's important to just kind of bring their head up and let them know that when that tension starts on that halter, they need to stop. And that's important to have it in a small confined area and maybe with somebody else present. And just consistency, I think, with walking is one of the most important parts. And then if they're a pretty stubborn calf that doesn't want to get around and you're dragging on them and they're just not wanting to move, but then they start to bring up their leg, you need to give them their head back. So you're pulling them, and then they start to give them their head back. You need to give them they need to realize it's a good thing for them to move, to get forward. And by relieving that tension, you're showing them that they're doing the right thing. They're coming forward, they're giving you what they want. And and so we'll just keep working them, keep tying them up consistently. Consistency is so important. Walking them in a circle, and then you can kind of start getting into showmanship, of course, after you've been walking them for a while. But that is kind of the basics to halter breaking, halter tying, and then getting into leading as well. Okay, now that we've kind of gotten them used to the halter, used to getting tied up, we're going to take them for their first bath, first rinse. It's important that before you get them wet at all, we're going to use that blower on them, get them used to the blower, and we're going to start at their feet and kind of work the way up. We want to make sure that they're used to that because we want to make sure before we get them completely wet and lower the body temperature that we're able to bring it back up with the blower and that they're going to be used to that. It's also always good before you rinse or before you wash that we do blow them and we get all that gunk and that dirt out and the dust. That's kind of easy to just blow out before we get them wet. So we're going to start by rinsing them. Kind of always like to rinse them, get them wet really first, super wet. We're going to take it kind of towards their ears a little bit. If we're standing back here, we're going to have that hose kind of angled this way the whole time. Bring it down, get them soaking wet, and then we like to use, there's a couple options. We can use this foamer. It's a nice product where you can put soap in it, hook it up to the hose, and it'll get super soapy kind of everywhere. That's a good product. Or you can just use soap. We use Dove shampoo or Dawn dish soap. They both work great. Some super cheap options. You don't need to get super fancy. And kind of take it down their back and down a little bit. And we like this scrub brush for washing. It's just a Weaver product, super easy. We're going to start by scrubbing. We'll scrub in circles everywhere. We're going to get up underneath here. They get super dirty up underneath here, so it's important to completely rinse and wash that out and completely scrub it. We're going to scrub their knees. They like to get super dirty in their knees from laying down all the time. And once they're all soapy, we're going to then brush all their hair down. So when we rinse them, that soap should come out real easy and nice. So after they're all soaped up, we're going to take that water again. We're going to rinse them kind of angled towards their head or towards their point of shoulder a little bit better. And we want to make sure that all that soap gets out. So when that water is running off this calf, it should be clear. You should not see any soap. You can take your brush, take it back down, squeeze that water out, and if there's any soap coming out, you're not done. You're going to keep rinsing. Really important to get that soap out. Make sure their hide is healthy. Make sure we don't get any dandruff. We're not leaving any dirt in there. Not making them super itchy on their skin. So that's super important. Once they're completely rinsed out, we're going to take this brush again, and we're going to brush all that hair down again on each side. We'll take it all down. And then we're going to kind of bring it all towards their ears is what we like to say. So we'll bring this, use the same brush, and kind of bring it all towards their ears. Sometimes if you have calves whose hair is a little bit more stubborn or they don't have that much hair or you like to see a little bit cowlicky, then we'll also take this rice root brush. They're a good combination. You can take this brush, go over it with this. Really make sure that it's just going the direction that you want it, all of the hair. And so we'll go throughout the animal and do all of this, including their legs, all kind of up towards the calf's ear. On both sides, inside and out, we're going to take it all towards the ear. The tail head's a little bit different. We're going to kind of make a point with the tail head, and then everything else is up and towards the ear. Okay, so once they're all kind of combed out like that, then we're going to blow them. We're going to start by, I usually like to start on the back end, kind of work my way up. We like to get this calf completely dry when we're blowing. We're blowing at an angle that's, again, towards the ears, towards the point of shoulder. We're always wanting to blow kind of in this direction. I like to start back here. We're going to talk this way and always pointing up towards the ears. So this one is going to come a little bit more down. When you get to legs, it's a little bit different. I still like to bring all this hair kind of forward, but sometimes it's nice on these legs to actually kind of go almost at a point down here to really bring that hair off of the hide and bring it out, pop it out. Really important on the legs. But then once we do that, once we kind of go straight at it, it's important again to kind of go over it and make sure it's going towards the ears, going towards the head. Super important when you're washing that and blowing that you get all the belly super dry, super clean. It can be super important. This is an area that you may not want to spend too much time on, but it's really important. So you're blowing down here, and this area especially likes to get forgotten about. It can get really dirty down here. It's important to completely wash that out and blow it out completely. When we're washing and blowing, we want to make sure we're not getting any water in their ears. I know that's really hard to avoid sometimes if they're thrashing around, but it's kind of good to just maybe turn down your water pressure, turn down the blower a couple notches so the pressure isn't as much, and you can kind of take it closer, get it wet, get them wet down here. We just really don't want to get it in their ears. And so when you're blowing, if they're really not liking it, like this heifer, she hates it by her head, by her ears. She gets really angry about it. But it just takes time. Even though they're throwing their head and everything, it takes time. You start here, she's throwing a fit, you kind of back off to here, work your way back up. And even if she's throwing a fit, if you're in a safe position, you can just kind of keep at it because she's got to learn that it's okay. It's not going to be anything bad. It's a good situation. And it's important to kind of come up. You don't need to wash their head or their face every time. It's nice to get it wet, especially if you're trying to cool down their whole body temperature. But it's good to kind of blow that all out. If you have a calf that's wanting to kick a little bit more as you're learning when you're blowing or when you're washing, I would say one of the tricks that we use is we'll tie like a little plastic bag to the end of a show stick, and from a distance we'll kind of play with their foot and they'll kick, and then we're going to continue to play with their leg until they get bored of it and nothing's going to happen. And that's one of the things that you can kind of try and keep with it to kind of break that kicking. There's a couple tricks to that. All things that you can kind of break before you even get them on the wash rack, hopefully, when you're tying them and you're brushing them before they get wet or anything. It's important to kind of learn where they're sensitive, touch them all over, so when you do get them in those kinds of situations that it's not as big of a deal. But those are kind of the starting tips and tricks for getting your calf completely dry, completely clean the first time. Next, we're going to go over some basic equipment that you can have in your show barn to get started. One of the big ones is a blower. We have a double blower. You don't need a double blower. It's really nice, but you can just buy a single blower. Definitely need one of those. A chute, again, you don't need it. It's nice to have. I mean, it's easy to just tie the calves up on the panel too, but nice to have when you're going to jackpots or especially to fair. It's super nice. We have our fan set. Another thing you don't need, but is also really nice for county fair, for working hair, when you're trying to grow hair the months before fair. Super nice to have a fan set. Couple different brushes we use. We have this kind of metal comb that has super close together teeth. And this is one that we really like for fitting. We don't necessarily like to use the metal comb on the calf just every day. The metal is better because the adhesive doesn't seem to stick as bad when you're fitting, so it lasts a little bit longer and really brings up the hair. We have these two kind of plastic combs that are nice for everyday use. This is our skip tooth. This one picks up a little bit more hair, so that's kind of nice. Again, can be used for fitting, but the metal just seems to last a little bit longer before having to clean the adhesive out of it. This comb is super, super nice, especially for when you're training hair, everyday use. Really nice to have. It's expensive. It's a spendy brush, but it's worth it. Ours is broken, so we've gotten our good use out of her, but it really grabs all the hair, brings it forward. It's nice for when you're clipping, when you're blowing. Super good to just make sure you get all the hairs forward. Of course, for washing, we like to use this one, even when we're just training hair after we put product in. Right around their pasterns, we like to use this one too, so to bring up kind of that smaller, finer hair. Really nice to use. We like, of course, our rice root brush for washing. We have our foamer, kind of nice to have. And then these are some kind of basic things that you could have, some products to put in after you wash them. We have Clean Sheen. It's definitely a good option. You can mix it with maybe vinegar, or even just water to make it last a little bit longer. You put it in, gives the coat a nice, good condition just to keep. Show coat is a bit more expensive. It's a product that's used to grow hair. We usually don't use this until we're 90 to 120 days out from a show, but it's also a nice product to have around. Usually like to use the Clean Sheen just beginning with. Revive. we don't have anything around right now, but Revive is that little, or that big green can, very good option as well. Smells delicious, and it's that foamy white stuff. Good option, not super expensive for keeping their hide conditioned and clean for after you wash them. And you can blow that product in. Something else that we have that kids like to use is what we call a roto brush. You plug it into a drill, and for that hair that's really hard to get up, kind of around their hoof, on their leg, it's a really nice thing to use. It'll kind of put in more of the elbow grease for you without having you to do so much work. Ours is super, we haven't used it in a while, but it's a nice option to have. So these are kind of some basic things that you could use. When we come to clippers, I have my nice cordless Andes clippers. They're really nice to have around. We want to make sure we kind of have like 3 blades that we like to use. We have our T84 blade, which we use kind of on the head or on the back of the tail. We also have our medium blending blade. Also, again, good for kind of beginners where you don't want to take too big of a cut. You're just starting out. It's good for their head, down the front of their neck, and their tail as well. And then we have our super blocking blades, which are really good for once you get adhesive in the legs or in their tail head. This will cut through that strong, tacky adhesive. And then as you kind of get more comfortable with your clippers, you can use them when you're just clipping out prior to a show. But this is kind of your strongest blade that you want to have on hand. Those are kind of the important ones to keep, and you want to make sure you always have that oil up your clippers, your blades, make sure they last. First, get your animal. It's important to kind of talk to whoever you brought it from, the breeder, and you see what they were eating before you brought it home. You don't want to completely switch feeds on them. You want to keep with what they had, and then if you want to feed them something different, you can kind of slowly transition them. But kind of the basics, especially if you're just starting, stalker growers are always a good one, pre-con. They kind of go nice together. Really important. One gets fat on, one helps them grow a little bit more, get that frame on them. Really good starter pieces for when you first get your calf. And I think it's super important that you always give them a probiotic. You can mix it in the morning. It lasts you a while. Makes their gut right. Make sure everything's working good. So we'll start with kind of those basics, or whatever your breeder's feeding. Kind of keep on track with that. You want to completely switch it for the calf. And then hay-wise, we have some really nice hay, but it's kind of nice to just give them some hay that maybe isn't as high quality, because we're really wanting them to focus on the grain, and the hay is just more of a filler. If they're not eating their grain super good, then you can hold their hay. We want them to eat their grain and go after their grain. That's most important. It's got all the supplements that we want them, targeting the things that we want for them to grow. So that's super important. Feed them twice a day. And yeah, important to keep an eye on what your calf is eating, what their poop's looking like. Just make sure their gut's all right and gaining how you want. And then you can start to switch feeds as you start to get closer to fair, focusing more on certain things, depth. You want to clean up their front end, certain things like that.